Welcome to the Speak by Design podcast, where we study personal style, message structure, and message strategy so you can become a consistently compelling force. Let's dig in. I want you to imagine some of the worst meetings you've ever attended. And I hope there aren't too many that come to mind. But I'm looking for those meetings where you felt your time was wasted, where the meeting created more confusion and even decreased the morale of the room and led people to multitask during the meeting. So many people will say that meetings are the worst part of their day because so much time is wasted in the meetings. So, when we're talking about the art of the gathering, we are talking about the kind of gathering that propels people to think differently and act differently. They are the kind of meetings that people never forget. I can think of many from my own past that I'm going to share with you today that were meaningful and what that leader did that made it stick with me. So the first one that comes to mind was a sales leader at a consulting firm. His group was the global business development team, and they all got together. It started at 8 a.m. and the leader got up there. They had breakfast together, and then he got up there and he said, "All of you have submitted a song for today's meeting, and each of you will come up to the stage and explain why you chose this song, why it was meaningful to you." And now I cannot remember what song he chose, but he stood up there and he told the story of his childhood. And he said he came from a lower class family. His parents both worked in a factory, and he was a latchkey kid. And he came home one day from work, and everything was taken. There was barely anything left in the apartment, and the things that were left were broken. And in that instant, he believed that his parents had left him. And he said he never had felt pain like that, believing that he had been abandoned. Well, he later found out that his parents had not left him. They had been robbed. His feelings then shifted to anger because he couldn't imagine the kind of people who would steal from a family who had so little. And in that instant, he promised himself that he would never, ever be in a situation like this where they had so little. And that had driven incredible ambition in him, which had led him to pursue college. He was the first in his family to go to college and a graduate degree, and now to be the leader in business development for this global consulting firm. This man is incredibly successful today, and his story was incredibly moving to the audience. Many people had tears in their eyes, and it set a tone for the entire gathering that people were going to be sharing personally. And person after person got up with their music and explained why they chose the song. And around lunchtime, the open bar arrived, so that they had a DJ who was playing these songs, but the DJ stayed the whole day. But at lunchtime, this became more of a party. And in the afternoon, it became a dance party. I know this is hard to imagine, such a gathering, but it's that kind of gathering that people never forget. And what it did was it helped this group of people who sometimes felt in competition with one another in their sales efforts come together as one and understand one another's motivations and celebrate the triumphs and the tribulations that they've each encountered. Another memorable event that I was a part of was for a group of people in the senior living space. And these were people who run those properties, manage those properties, coming together. And we were facilitating a training for them. They wanted the theme. We chose the theme of courage. And at the time, Roar by Katy Perry had just come out. We played that instrumental music as people came in. And at the centerpiece, we had a safari themed centerpiece on every table. I think we had some stuffed animal tigers and things. And in any of the breaks, we would play safari type jungle themed songs. And the CEO got up and spoke about courage, and that today it's about stepping out of your comfort zone, trying something new, leaning into the discussion versus avoiding or freezing under pressure. And even today, when I run into people who were a part of that training, and that was 10 years ago now, people will say, "Oh, I remember you from the jungle training." And they remember the theme, they remember what it looked like. So visuals stick with people as well as the story and concept of our theme, which was around courageous communication. Then another event we did, we used Rihanna's Shine Bright Like a Diamond song, the instrumental version, and we told the story of the Acres of Diamonds story. I don't know if you all know this story. Google it if you don't. It's a beautiful story to tell people about opportunity, that many times we feel like there is no opportunity around us, that every door is closed, but there are so many diamonds under the surface just waiting for us to mine them and dig them out. And so we had centerpieces that were like shiny stones. They of course were not diamonds. But then we also gave them discussion questions around diamonds. Where do you think you have diamonds in your current work today? What diamonds are you going to look for after today? So diamonds became a theme, and then we connected back to that theme at the end of the training. And even after that event, we sent them a follow up note. And in the follow up note, we used a banner with a visual of diamonds. And we talked about diamonds in the body of the email and in the subject line. So you can, when you have a theme like that that resonates and you stick with it and you're consistent and keep bringing it up, it stays with people. People remember it for years and years afterward. Another event that I was a part of was a women's leadership event. People had to be nominated to be a part of this group. So already there was high recognition about being a part of this group. And they had some remote meetings in advance of a big in person day. So the remote meetings were almost teasers and primers to build excitement toward the big day. And the big day, what was special about it to me was how thoughtfully planned it was. It was when they came in, there was something waiting for them at their hotel. They had a cocktail hour or gathering to meet socially the night before. In the morning, they all were taken in vans or buses. I can't remember what picked them up, but they had transportation to the main event location. They had breakfast there. They had a gift waiting for them, and these were beautifully wrapped gifts. And you opened it up, and it was a scarf. So it was very feminine, fit the group very well. And every scarf was slightly different in colors and design. So everybody was comparing their scarves. And then at the end of the day, everybody took a picture with their scarf. Now, next level would have been if we had had an analogy about what the scarf meant. But the thoughtfulness around the gifts and taking care of every moment and making these people feel like very important people. Everybody was a VIP to be in this group, and they were treated so well. So these women ended up leaving that event not only full of inspiration from wonderful speakers they heard that day, but also by the thoughtful gifts and attention they received logistically throughout the gathering. Great leaders are those who host great gatherings because those gatherings, when they go off well, the leader is associated with that level of thoughtfulness. So, here are the three things to keep in mind for a gathering. You need to put in some thoughtful time around the planning. This is not something to outsource to someone else. Get involved in the planning. Secondly, is make sure it's highly interactive facilitation. Nobody wants to come to a gathering that's a lecture, and no one wants to come to a gathering where it feels like the Wild West, where there's no plan at all. So it's that highly active, interactive facilitation where many voices are heard, the questions have been prepared and designed, and there's no wasted time. And then the third thing about gatherings is there's got to be some surprise factors. So let's talk about all three of those. So for thoughtful planning, figure out what is the outcome? Why are you even doing this? How do you want this to change people's minds or change their actions? Is this for business development? Is it for cultural change in your own team? Is it more of a listening tour or a vision setting meeting? Or is this for problem solving? Or do you need a commitment, a decision made after the meeting? But if you have too many things that you're trying to achieve in that meeting, it's most likely that they're not all going to be achieved. So also be rational with yourself. You can't do everything that, let's say you're trying to do 12 months worth of activities in a 3 hour time length. That's not possible. So be reasonable with yourself and what's achievable from this, and ask yourself that very important question: how do you want these people to change from the event? What do you want them to think? What do you want them to do after the event? And how do you want them to feel about what they did together? So thinking about the outcome after that gathering, what should they be thinking about? Now, if it's heavy amounts of thinking, let's suppose that you want them to make a decision based upon some analysis. Don't reveal the analysis in the gathering. Send that as a pre-read. And then when it comes to what you want them to do, if it's something technical, you want to teach them how to do something in a piece of technology, make sure that as part of this gathering, you are having a demonstration. If it's with a piece of technology, have someone demo the tool as part of the gathering. And then that feeling, that's where those themes are so important. So choose a theme. Maybe it's curiosity. I mentioned courage. It could be connection. Maybe it is focusing on one thing. I love that quote: when you chase two rabbits, you catch neither one. We have to focus on one thing at a time. And there's actually a great book that uses that. I think it's called The One Thing. And you could even give them a book that has the same title as the theme of your meeting. And now they're receiving a gift to remind them of that theme. Maybe it is be the change. Be the change. So you're empowering them to become champions of whatever you're focusing on in that gathering. Then go choose your speakers. You've got to have at least 3 speakers for a 1 hour gathering. It's very hard to just listen to the same voice for 1 hour unless you have an incredibly dynamic speaker. But 3 speakers is nice. And even if you have an incredibly dynamic speaker, maybe you still have one person who kicks off and introduces that speaker, and another person who comes on to ask questions of that speaker and moderate those questions with the audience. And then including guest speakers. Who can you bring from the outside? If this is an internal meeting, if it's with clients, maybe, or prospective clients, maybe you have some of your current clients be guest speakers to talk about how helpful your services have been. And then make sure that the speakers know exactly what their role is. Because if you say, oh, you're going to talk about X, but you don't give them any clear questions to answer, you're leaving a lot up to chance in what they speak about. And we want them to show up and be focused and really get into the topic we want them to cover. You might, for very high profile gatherings, you might want to hold rehearsals with those speakers as well. Plan your opening moments. Uh, there's a lot you can do before the main act begins. So, planning those opening moments as people come in, is there something they need to do? Is there food they should grab? Is there something that they're supposed to ponder before the session begins? Will you have somebody get up there and get the group excited about the day? Oh, that person is meant to kick off the day, bring excitement, almost like they could be the MC of the gathering, but almost like the orchestra conductor, somebody who's setting up what will be the chain of events to follow. And that's a nice leadership role. So if you are the leader and you want to be showcasing other speakers, but emerge as a very strong organizer of the day, be the first to kick off the day. And those first words that are seen on the screen or spoken out of your mouth, the music that they hear, all of that is creating your atmosphere. That question about what you want the audience to feel, you can create that feeling before the event even starts just by the way you decorate the tables, the visuals they see on the screen. Sometimes we'll put a montage of photos that are moving across the screen while people are coming into the space and having their breakfast that day. And then make sure you plan that closing. That's the part that I always wish people spent more time on. They spend more time on the opening because they know how important it is, but the closing is what ensures that the next steps are going to be taken. So, what is the closing going to be? Do you have a survey for them? Are there any new tools or access to new tools you want to give them? Will you be sending a reminder 1 week after? Will you be encouraging them to meet again on their own with their manager to talk about something? Will there be a debrief meeting? Plan for at least 2 to 3 touch points after this gathering. Because if you just have the gathering and think, "Oh, we did it," you're you're not going to see the results you would see if you sustained some kind of communication afterwards. And you sustain, just like in trainings, you sustain the learning from trainings, group trainings, usually with private coaching, or you sustain the learnings by asking them to do something with their manager or turn in a communication or turn in something completed. And that's all in your planning phase. Then there's the actual facilitation. How are you going to make this gathering really interesting? It's usually with a mixture of panels and keynotes and breakout or table discussions that are going on. Maybe you even put a facilitator, a table facilitator at each table. If you have a large room, but every table has a leader at that table who's going to run the discussion when you get to those points. If it's a virtual meeting, use your breakouts, use the polling and the voting tools that are built into the technology. And then build in interactivity so that we never hear a speaker going on for 5 minutes or longer. I sometimes tell people 3 minutes. We want to have, but at least 7 minutes. Every 7 minutes, the audience should be doing something or you're changing speakers. That's so dynamic to watch. And for co-presentations, co-presenting is the hardest presentation form because it requires rehearsal. It is the most interesting to your audience, especially if it looks less scripted and there's overlapping voices and people chiming in unexpectedly in different sections, but that requires careful rehearsal. Often, when we're preparing co presentations, I will say, do we have time built in to do rehearsals with one another? Because I don't want us to go in there and look like we're not integrated as co-presenters. It's almost easier to let one person run the whole show than to do a co-presentation. But co-presenting sets up the team more effectively in front of the room, and it is way more interesting to watch. And then another thing to think about is you can make things more interactive if you are capturing answers on sticky notes, on posters, or giving people markers and flip charts and they're having to put in their responses. If people have to stand up and do something, they immediately get more psychologically invested in the activity. And the more invested they are, the more likely they are to keep taking action after the meeting, after the gathering. You also want to make sure that nothing you're doing feels cliche and routine, that it's clear you have even looked for ways to make this more fun and to have some surprise factors. So, what can you do that will be unexpected to this group? And that's going to require your creativity. And it could be having something very funny, an interesting activity during a break, but something that gets people talking, laughing, and wondering what on earth is going to happen next. Surprise factors are very valuable to your gatherings. I hope that this lesson on supercharging your gatherings and thinking of gatherings more as an art form than a meeting has given you numerous ideas of what you want to try, what you want to try to do to go achieve bigger results in a faster, more efficient way, in a memorable way. All right, everyone, have a great rest of your day. Take care. If you are enjoying all of these lessons, but now you're hungering to turn all of this into skills and habits that make this work intuitive and natural so that you don't have to think about it, then you want to join Speak by Design University. That's our coaching program that gives you private coaching, group coaching with me, group training, self-paced learning, as well as exceptional networking with other people like you. This program is for managers and above, people whose careers are on fire and they're looking to hit their next level, and they want to do that sooner rather than later. Check it out at speakbydesign.com/join. That's speakbydesign.com/join, and you can start with us at the 1st of next month. We hope to see you there.